second chapter. We're still in the first Mishnah. We only did the first part of the Mishnah, and we're going to continue into the second part of the Mishnah. We welcome everybody aboard. Okay. So, briefly to review, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, Judah the Prince, the redactor of the Mishnah, he's the one who put together the Mishnah in the 2nd century, fearing what the future of the Jewish people would be. We shouldn't lose any of the oral tradition, the oral law. So the Mishnah is written down. 60 tractates, one of them, just one of them, this one, is concerning Jewish ethics. Everything else is Jewish law. Mixed in it, of course, is Jewish ethics, but this is Jewish ethics to the next level, Milsi de Chasidusa, the beyond the letter of the law in how we should lead our lives. So he said, which is the right path that a man should choose for himself? A person should choose whatever is harmonious for the one who does it, and harmonious for the rest of humanity. So we dealt with that part last week. We're going to continue now in the Mishnah, and he says that we should be as careful with a minor mitzvah as with a major mitzvah, for you do not know the rewards of the mitzvahs. Consider the cost, he continues, he says, consider the cost of the mitzvah against its rewards, and the rewards of a transgression against its cost.
Sorry,
and finally,
I don't understand what a small one is and what a big one is.
Oh, well, we're going to go, very, very good. We're going to go into all of the nitty gritty in a moment. I just want to first read it and then we'll go into Leah. Yeah, good question. A good question. Commentators deal with that, so we'll get there in a moment. Contemplate 3 things, and you will not come to the hands of a transgression. Know what is above you, a seeing eye, a listening ear, and all the deeds being inscribed in a book. Okay, those are the words. So let us now go into an understanding of what this means over here, and let's take it apart little by little. So hopefully we'll get little by little a deep understanding. Well, as we do with every Mishnah, we start off more superficial, simpler understanding, and then we try to dig a little deeper. So let's take the first part. Be as careful with a minor mitzvah, and of course, as like Leah asked, what's a minor mitzvah, as with a major mitzvah. And why should you do that? Why should you do that? For you do not know the rewards of the mitzvahs. Okay, let's start with that. So the Abarbanel explains that we should be, what is the Mishnah telling us over here? We need to be enthusiastic of all mitzvahs because you don't know the reward. Even though there's a hierarchy when it comes to mitzvahs. For example, if you got to redeem captives, that takes precedence over personal prayers. If there's a mace mitzvah, someone has passed away and no one is there to take care of the funeral or burying this person, you got to take care of it. Right. So even though there is some kind of hierarchy, but the enthusiasm is what the Abarbanel says, is the explanation of this Mishnah. Be enthusiastic with a big mitzvah and likewise with a small mitzvah. That's the Abarbanel. The Maharam Shik, he says that each mitzvah, treat them equally, perform them equally, because you don't know which mitzvah is going to tip the scale and to bring salvation to this world, to yourself and to the world. You don't know. So treat them equally. That's what he explains. Okay. Now, what does it mean, a minor mitzvah versus a major mitzvah? So the Rambam explains, a minor mitzvah is like rejoicing on the holiday. On the three major holidays, there's a mitzvah, b'samachta b'chagecha, that you should have joy in the holiday. And so he says that that's an example of a minor mitzvah. What's an example of a major mitzvah? Circumcision, Paschal lamb offering in the times of the Holy Temple is a major mitzvah. And actually also says tzitzis. Interesting. That tzitzis is also a major mitzvah. Okay. So other commentaries explain that what does it mean here, minor and major? It doesn't mean the in terms of a reward or what is considered more important in a hierarchy, but in another commentary says that the nature of the human being is that when you do something often, it has less value. When you do something only from time to time, that has greater value. So, we go to work often and we go on vacation less often. So what do we value more? The vacation, right? Than work. And in anything like that. So likewise, when it comes to performance of mitzvahs, we can have the same attitude. The mitzvahs that we do day in, day out can become rote, like prayer can become rote. And you don't have the enthusiasm in the mitzvah. Other things that we do likewise on a more regular basis or on a daily basis, as opposed to those mitzvahs that come, once a year, that you're standing at Mount Sinai hearing the Ten Commandments on Shavuos, or, that you are eating matzah on, Seder night in Canada, as we call it here. Those usually have more enthusiasm because they're not done by road. So comes the Lakutei Basar Lakutei is a sefer that has a compendium of different commentators, and says that, well, look at the world, and it's really the opposite. What's more important, the things that are less of, or the things that are more of in our lives, in the nature of creation? Well, there's more air than anything else. There's more water than there is bread. And there's more, bread than other kinds of foods, and so on and so forth. What do we see from that? Well, air is most important. Bread is important. Other foods important, but, air can't live too long without it. Water, likewise, and food. It's less value, shall we say, if you were to put in a hierarchy of what we're more dependent on. So likewise, the mitzvahs that come often, on the contrary, that our natural inclination is to see it of a lesser value, but in the truth is the fact that it's more common means it's of greater value. And therefore, be careful with a minor mitzvah, minor in your estimation, as you would with a major mitzvah. That's another commentary. Okay. So what comes out of this then is based on this idea. The sages in the Talmud tell us that that when you are occupied in one mitzvah, you are now exempt from another mitzvah. The second mitzvah might be more major, might be in the hierarchy, but if you're already involved in this mitzvah, regardless of perceived value, don't put that mitzvah down to engage in another mitzvah. Likewise, as our sages say, that by divine providence, if one mitzvah comes to you and you have that opportunity, engage, partake in it, make it happen. Why? Because that's the one came to your hand. Don't put it aside. Don't put it aside thinking, well, I might have a bigger one that's coming up. No, this is your mitzvah. Why? Divine providence, God wants you to do this one. There might be something you value more, or maybe in a hierarchy of things, maybe there is sometimes more value. Now, sometimes we do have to put aside a mitzvah. That's not the general principle, though. The only reason we put aside study of Torah, for example, to pray, is because we'd anyways put aside study of Torah in order to do other things like eat or do work. All right. So, but when you're engaged in a mitzvah comes to you, grab that mitzvah, even though there might be something that might be more valuable to you, or in other manners, like more valuable, because ultimately, we don't know what's going to tip the scale. We need to have equal enthusiasm in all of them. We don't know what is the reward, and therefore, whatever comes to hand, engage. There was about 500 years ago, a Jew who was imprisoned by the local king. Those days, if you didn't pay your tax on time, you could get imprisoned, or any other things. And he was in prison, and the king was somewhat benevolent, because he said, I'm going to give you one day you get off, that you can perform your religious duties as a religious, committed Jew. This king was non-Jewish king, allowed him. So he actually wrote a letter to Rabbi David ben Shlomo, a scholar in the 15th century, 16th, 15th, 16th century. And also, should I wait for Rosh Hashanah when they blow the shofar, or Pesach is coming before that? Should I come out for Pesach in order to eat matzah? So his response was, whatever mitzvah comes first, make that the day that you get out, even if it might be a lesser value in your mind, or even may not be as seemingly great reward, or whatever the case may be. First one that comes in. That was the response. Okay. Before we continue, any questions, any comments, any thoughts? So we're here on 3 platforms. We're on Zoom, where I see and you see. We are on Clubhouse, and we're on Facebook. Richard, go ahead.
So this actually goes back to the original question I had the other day. So isn't it the difficulty is really is finding a way to have the same enthusiasm no matter what mitzvah you're doing? Isn't that at least in my mind, I feel like that's probably the most difficult thing, is to have that same girth of enthusiasm no matter which mitzvah you're doing.
Right. So,
and they don't seem to give an explanation here either.
Well, I think we gave some perspective on it. That is the question. That's the issue over here, right? The issue is, how do you have that? What the Mishneh is saying over here, that a major, minor mitzvah, you don't know the reward, and therefore, have same enthusiasm. That's the first point. The second point we made was recognize that you don't know what tips the scale, right? You don't know what tips the scale in your life and in the world around us. In other words, that which has real value on high, that is really going to make a difference down below, right? So, keeping that in mind, that helps. Right, keeping in mind the idea of the perspective in mind that air is the most common thing and the most thing that we take for granted, right? Water, less common. Also take it probably more for granted. Still pretty available. Oh, look at that. Look how available it is. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol nהיה bidvarei.
Amen.
L'chaim. So, also abundantly available, not as much as air, right? But without air, you're not going to live past a minute or two or whatever, a few minutes. Water you can live a few days without. Bread you can live without. Food you can live without a week, right? So, but what do we give more value to? The food, much more value than the air. So if we think about that, that gives us perspective. And therefore that we can say, oh, you know what? Yeah, you're right. Maybe this thing that I don't give as much value to, indeed is really important. So that's the second point, right? That's the second point. I thought there was another point I had. I think that was 2 points that we made here. But actually, we'll come to more. So, that helps to, to overcome the natural, inclination that we have to certain things that we feel more close to, and a great enthusiasm. So you're right, it's a struggle, but when we bear that in mind, we'll get into more ideas about this shortly. But thank you, Richard. Davida. Richard, 1 second. I'm sorry. Did I anything you wanted to add to this?
No, that was good. And
Okay.
that and really, step 2 is what I have to work on.
Yeah. So we'll we didn't finish the thought because we're going to continue in the Mishneh, but I broke it up for the first part. Davida, please share with us.
I just had a quick question because I'm a bit confused why they're bringing up the word reward. Shouldn't we be doing the mitzvahs because we should be doing that?
Very good. We're going to get into that in a moment. Oh, you segued beautifully into the next part. Shit. Look at that. Amazing. Amazing. Let's all right. Before we segue to the next part, which will tie in with the first part, thank you, Davida. Beautiful. Any other questions or comments before we move? Okay, so let us continue. Okay. So we just said be careful, be as careful with a minor mitzvah as with a major one, for you don't know the rewards of the mitzvahs. Rewards. Okay. So the question isn't really so much Davida on this part. It's really more of a question here. Consider the cost of the mitzvah against its rewards. And the first part is telling us, you don't know the reward of the mitzvah. Well, according to one explanation, right, you don't know what's going to tilt the scale. It might be that minor mitzvah that you thought that was not so important. And that's really what tilts the scale in your life and, brings untold, salvation and goodness to you and to the world around you. So it's not really so much a question on the first part, but it indeed is a question on this next part. Consider the cost of the mitzvah. Now, what does it mean, cost? We'll get there in a moment. Against its rewards. In other words, there's reward. Aren't you supposed to do mitzvahs without a reward, as Davida asks? And the rewards of the transgression, the gain of the transgression, right, against its cost. So let's take again this step by step. Let's take it from the simple explanation that Bartanura explains. So what does it mean, a loss of a mitzvah? It means there's a monetary loss when you're buying a very expensive esrog, for example, right? Or a very expensive pair of tefillin, or making a beautiful Shabbos and buying expensive things for the home to, to beautify your Shabbos. So there's a monetary loss. Maybe, it could save up all that money for vacation instead. Or not just a monetary loss, there's an inconvenience, right? The cost of the mitzvahs, the monetary cost, but there's also a cost of time and effort that to put in. Cleaning for Pesach. Oh my gosh. Don't want to remind anybody right now, Pesach is far away. No one's thinking about cleaning for Pesach. But, that's the cost of the mitzvah. So weigh that against its reward, which will far exceed, says the Bartanura. How does this fit in with what we learned in chapter 1, Antigonus, who advocates that you should serve God without a reward, without the notion of a reward? So how does that fit in? So perhaps we can explain it as follows. The question's clear? Yeah, we're good? Question's clear? Okay. So perhaps we can explain it as follows. There's doing a mitzvah, and when you do a mitzvah, you do it, based on your godly soul, just to do what God wants and so on, which is wonderful. But ultimately, what we need to do is also be able to speak to our lower self, to our animal self, to our lower, self-directed nature, and our self-directed nature of the animal soul, the evil inclination. We got to talk to it too, right? How do you talk to it? You don't talk to it, well, serve God without a reward. To it, you got to talk to and say, there is a reward here. It's very rewarding what you get out of doing a mitzvah. So let me explain. We have two parts of us, a godly soul, an animal/human soul. The godly soul wants to do the mitzvah. Reward, that there's no notion of reward. All it wants is connection with God, right? That's all it wants, is to connect. It's not seeking benefit, right? It's not a benefit, the connection. It's just its nature. It just wants to be bound up in its source, the godly soul, right? And that's, serving God without any reward, right? Just as God wants that, that's what the soul wants. But in our divine service, we have, again, the animal soul/human soul, self-directed. It knows about consequence. It knows about, value, and it weighs values and so on. That's the nature of the animal soul. Is this good for me? Am I going to benefit from this? That's what the animal soul is saying. So we need to have a conversation here as we grow in our connection with Hashem and our Judaism. We have to now incorporate the animal soul and talk to it and let it know that there's something rewarding here that you gain. So what this is really saying then is, first you've got to be committed because this is what God wants, is the right thing, period. And this is what your divine soul wants, just that connection, pure connection. But then that doesn't necessarily bring along the other part of you that's the negative side, the dark side, the self-directed nature of our animal soul. We want to gain that also and to be part of the service of God. So therefore, you need to give it its argument that there's a greater gain in doing the mitzvah, right? Than the loss that you will have. Because who's the loss to? Money. Who cares about money? Well, our humanness needs money. Our self-directedness needs money for ourselves, right? Makes us feel good, makes us feel powerful, makes us feel secure. Who's secure? Not the godly soul with money, the animal soul with money, right? So I'm going to have a monetary loss. I'm going to be inconvenienced. I can't watch my sitcom. I can't, because I got to go in the sukkah now. I've got to go to shul now. I've got to do the whatever it is. So you got to tell, no, Mr. Evil Inclination, we're going to get you involved into this because you know what? The reward's greater for you. So we got to talk its language. Is that clear, Davida? Okay. Let us continue then. The gain obtained by committing a sin. In other words, there's a physical and spiritual damage that's caused by doing something wrong, not just spiritual, physical. Ultimately, there's a physical damage. Just learning now the Rambam in Hilchos Deis, and the Rambam speaks about, eating properly and so on. So there's great physical damage when we eat gluttonously. Like I sometimes do eat more than I should. Try not to, the whole lot. But we had a simcha here, a bar mitzvah. Now that things are open, more open at least, much more open, and it was over the top, and try to but still probably ate a little too much, right? There's a physical damage that we feel it afterwards, right? So not just spiritual, but physical damage. So we need to weigh that, the damage, and in the temporary pleasure that we might have over something that is, the gain that we have, which is only temporary, far is the gain, meaning the pleasure is a momentary pleasure, but the damage is much more long term, and physical and spiritual. Okay. The Rambam, Maimonides, just spoke about him, right? So he learns this Mishnah, and he explains as follows. It's an interesting nuance over here. The severity of the punishment for failure to perform a particular mitzvah, right, indicates the amount of the reward for its performance. So in other words, Shabbos, God forbid someone doesn't, keep Shabbos. There's based on the punishment, right? It's a severe punishment. From there, what do we know? The Rambam says how great the reward is in keeping it, right? This from, again, the severity of punishment for a particular sin indicates the great reward also there is from resisting from doing that sin. So he learns the Mishnah as follows, and listen carefully. Consider the mitzvah, the loss, meaning the punishment for failure to fulfill it, right? So consider the loss. There's a punishment for failure to fulfill it. Why? In order to determine its reward. And determine the reward, meaning what's the reward for abstaining from doing a sin? How? By considering the punishment for committing it. Is that clear? Anybody have a problem with this teaching in the Rambam? Chaim. Come on, Denny, Leah, Richard, guys. Liba, Davida, Regina, Shoal. Should be very obvious what the question is over here. What's Rambam saying? Let me repeat. Make sure you got it. And here on Clubhouse, please. Let me repeat. Rambam is saying like this. There's a severity for a punishment for failure to perform a particular mitzvah. Right? That indicates the amount of reward for its performance. Conversely, there's a severity of punishment for a particular sin, which indicates a reward for resisting that sin. Right? What's the problem with that statement? Okay, Richard, thank you. What's the difficulty with that statement? Well, didn't we just get finished saying in the Mishnah that we don't know the reward for a mitzvah? And here the Rambam is playing a whole Talmudic, pretty smart, I must say, right? What does he say? Now, the severity of punishment for failure to do a mitzvah is going to tell you the reward for the mitzvah. So he's saying there's a reward for a mitzvah. And how do you figure it out? Because if you don't do it, there's a punishment. Likewise, right? Likewise, or conversely, the severity of punishment for doing a particular sin, right, will tell us the reward of resisting to do that sin. Right? In other words, there's a punishment for eating pig. Resisting from eating pig will tell me the reward that I get for it. Then we just get finished that we don't know the reward for mitzvahs. So what's the Rambam talking about? Seems to be a contradiction to what we've just learned. Is that clear? Yeah, thumbs up. How do you give a thumbs up in Clubhouse? I don't know. Okay. I guess if everybody's silent, there must be a thumbs up.
I'm actually, struggling to,
Oh, don't come up with the answer yet.
Oh, okay.
No, don't struggle to get the question. Let the question sink in and bother you.
Well, that is exactly what is bothering me. Yes.
Okay. So Chassidus explains as follows. Every mitzvah has an infinite quality to it and a finite quality to it. On the one hand, it is the Ratzain Hashem, the will of God, and it therefore is, so to speak, like a chok, beyond and infinite. And on the other hand, it's also the Chokhmah. It is the wisdom of God and has a finite, can have from there at least, finite understanding, right? So the infinite element of the mitzvah, again, is the fact that it's a divine will. And the performance of the divine will of God in that level connects the individual to the infinite of God. From that perspective, there is no distinction, there is no differentiation between mitzvahs. They're all equally the will of God. They all equally unite you with God. They're all equally beyond any rationale, beyond any reward. I mean, the reward is the connection. Okay? But then there's the finite element of the mitzvah. which are the unique properties of each particular mitzvah. How they refine the individual. How do we see that? How many positive commandments are there, folks?
248.
Exactly. Why? Because there are 248 limbs of the body. And God, the king, as it were, he has 248 limbs, figuratively speaking. Figuratively speaking. 248 lights of illumination that each mitzvah illuminates the reality of us in a unique way. That's the finite uniqueness, just like the soul gives power to the eye to see and to the ear to hear and to my arm to stretch, right? My eye doesn't stretch, my ear doesn't stretch, but my arm does. Why? Because the power of the soul that vests itself is different in the arm than it is in the eye or the ear. But that's all the finite element of the mitzvah. Its uniqueness in refinement of me and, of course, of the world around me. In that refinement, there's greater and lesser. More important limbs, less important limbs, so to speak. Is that clear?
Yeah. So you're saying each mitzvah we do represents one of our limbs, the positive ones, right? The positive mitzvah is represented. So we know which one relates to which limb?
In Kabbalah, it speaks about that. But, so for example, when I had a bad back 35 years ago, and I asked the Rebbe for a bracha, I was like 2 weeks flat on my back. So he gave me an answer that I should have my tefillin and mezuzahs checked. Which incidentally, I just had them checked like 3 months earlier, and I was pretty surprised at that. But of course, I checked them, and there were problems with some of the mezuzahs. Got them fixed, and things were better. What does that mean? Tefillin and mezuzahs somehow are connected with something about me that brings a healing, refinement, right? So, as a result, be careful with a minor mitzvah as with a major mitzvah, since you don't know the reward of the mitzvahs. Means as follows: that even though while we focus on the particulars of a mitzvah, meaning that there is something minor, meaning that it's finite, right? We need at the same time to retain awareness of the infinite element of of each mitzvah, of which the reward can't be known. So we need both things at the same time. So the Rambam is emphasizing the finite element of the mitzvah. The other commentaries are emphasizing the infinite value of the mitzvah. What do we need? Both. So again, be careful with a minor mitzvah as with a major mitzvah, since you don't know the reward of the mitzvah, meaning even though while you focus on internalizing the particulars of a mitzvah, by which they are minor, meaning there is some finite value to it, right? We try to understand, internalize meaning to understand, to get what we can to understand about the mitzvah, its uniqueness, its refinement, its particularization, which is in its sense that it's its reward. Retain the awareness of the infinite element. Don't forget that. Meaning beyond the reward, because we don't know the reward on the infinite level of the mitzvahs. They're all equal. They're the will of God. Different way to understand this now.
So we could say it's one idea is relating to our animalistic soul, and one idea is relating to our more godly soul. The finite and the infinite.
Yeah, in a sense. Yeah. Yes. Right. And that ties in very good, Lily. Thank you, Leah. Very good. It brings the two things together. Right. Because there are those two elements in us, as we mentioned before. Yeah, so it ties it in very nicely. We have a little more time to go into the next part. Say aye, or give me thumbs up, or should we just, because it's our time, a lot of time is up. But if yeah, we're good. Okay. So let us take the next plunge to end off the Mishnah. Contemplate three things, and you will not come to the hands of a transgression. Know what is above you, a seeing eye, a listening ear, and all the deeds being inscribed in a book. Okay. So the Meiri explains these three concepts as follows. Number one, the existence of a being that's above you, right? Know that there's a God above you, right? And that God watches and hears you. And the third thing, writing down, meaning he doesn't forget. That's the Meiri, what he explains. Mayam Loyes says, eyes that see your thoughts and ears that hear your speech. And yet we're held accountable, truly accountable, only for the deeds, because that's written in the book. That's written in the book, right? On the other hand, when it comes to good deeds, that's for our negative, for the negative side. On the other hand, when it comes to good deeds, if we plan to do a good deed and we weren't able to fulfill it because something happened that didn't allow us to fulfill it, it's still considered as if you've done the good deed. But if you plan to do something bad, so God knows your thoughts, he knows what you spoke, but it only will be written, and total responsibility for is your actions in that respect. Doesn't mean there's not a blemish on your soul, but that's what you're totally responsible for.
Is the book of life, that book?
No. Your deeds are inscribed into the book. No, in other words, it's a book of judgment, right? That's what it means here. Be careful, because be aware that your deeds are being written into a book that you're responsible for. It's not the book of life. Book of life means who's going to live, that God's putting you into giving you a year of life, as we say Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. This is a book of holding an account of where we're holding in the world. Okay, so that's a simple meaning. Let's go deeper now. Let's go deeper. So deeper is as follows. Mishneh says, Da malamayla mimoch. No, that which is above is from you. So, everything is in punctuation, right? No, what is above from you, or what is above from you, it's from you. In other words, whatever happens, we are in complete mastery and control of our destiny. Even the heavens above, we are masters of, because we impact the heavens above, the divine order of things. In other words, if I'm compassionate down here, and guess what? That will facilitate and reflect up there also divine compassion. Know that whatever happens up there, it's coming from me. if I have the compassion, then I will be bestowed compassion. It will reflect itself up there. That is a deeper understanding of those words. Now, let's continue. This idea of contemplate three things, the beginning of chapter 3, we also have a similar idea. That you should look deeply into three things and you won't come to do a sin. And you know what it says there? Know where you come from, where you're going, and who you're going to give an accounting for. And what does he say there? No, you come from a putrid drop and you're going to become dust and maggots and worms. That's where your body goes and so on. Which doesn't sound very wholesome. It doesn't sound very, positive. We'll get to that Mishneh in chapter 3. We're not going to discuss it here. It's just actually to give us a context of what Rabbi is saying here in this Mishnah, that this is really uplifting the person. It's not anything denigrating to, the body. Again, we'll get there over there. And in other words, there's different ways that we can reflect and meditate upon things that will bring us to different places and different perspectives and understanding of life and where we are. So Chassidus explains two different types of meditations that you can inspire us to serve God. We can reflect about the greatness of God and how sublime our soul, our divine soul is, and how we have such a meaningful, purposeful existence here to create a dwelling place for God, that we're a partner with God. You can meditate on all of that, which is pretty awesome. Or you can reflect on how lowly your body is. Despicable, your body has got its own agenda that is just self-directed and, negative. You can, how shallow and lowly worldly pleasures are and so on. You can focus on all of that. Two different types of meditations. So when you reflect on the existence of an awesome God and an awesome soul that you have and an awesome mission in life, well, that's gonna bring you to a good mood, a joyful mood, right? Now, even if it may not bring you to such a lofty place, but at least it's gonna elevate you. It's gonna pick you up. Which is not the case if you meditate on how depraved we are through sin and how lowly we are when seeking worldly pleasures and so on. All those things are going to bring you to be dejected, lifeless. So therefore, this is the uniqueness of our Mishnah. Yeah, there's three things to look. Know that what's above you is from you. Look how powerful you are. And that what you do makes a difference, matters. This is what the Mishnah is telling us. To put it into other terms, we learn in Tanya. We learned this together in chapter 41 of Tanya. The Alter Rebbe says that we should ponder the infinite of God, how God is control of all the heavens, all the spiritual worlds, this world. He fills the world, transcends the world at the same time. And yet he puts that all aside, all of that aside, and all he cares about is to put his sovereignty over us, over me individually, so much so that I should be able to say that the world was created for me, that God stands over me, to look inside of me. Am I fulfilling the purpose that I was created for? Am I serving God the way I should be serving him? That God is looking at me, not looking at me with shaking his finger at me, but looking at me, giving me the inspiration that I can rise above and fulfill what I need to fulfill. That is the deeper understanding. Any questions, any comments?
Oh my goodness. If seriously.
We had a lot today, We had a lot there.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, if we honestly would realize that Hashem is above us and hears and sees and writes, we wouldn't do any bad things. We would only do good things. Only mitzvahs. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's a thought definitely we need to incorporate into our lives, and will definitely help us to become who we need to become. Absolutely. Absolutely. Tim, Adam, anything to share with us? All right. Oh. Go ahead, Adam.
Okay, Rabbi, thank you.
Sure.
I'm so, how to say, first time I'm from Indonesia. Thank you.
Okay.
It's me time. Yeah, your teaching is a very touch to my heart. I don't know how to say, but yeah, well, it's my first. I just want to say it's my first time to join your clubhouse. Thank you so much.
Okay.
And your teaching is a very good.
Thank
for
you.
Me,
thank you so
or
much.
learn about Chabad.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you, Adam. Wow. Beautiful. Okay. Tim.
Yeah, not much to add. But same as Adam, thank you, Rabbi Ronnie Fine.
Thank you, Tim. Hey, Tim. We usually see you. I see your picture over here. I see you. Are you on Zoom? You're zooming on Clubhouse.
Right. Yeah, it takes less of my battery.
I got you. That's okay.
I'm driving.
Yeah. No problems. No problems. No problems. Thank you. All right, Rashi, Andra. Anybody else that wants to share? If not, we will continue on Thursday with more teachings, and of course every day, 9:30 in the morning with Tanya. Oh, okay. Rashi. Yes, please share with us.
Actually, I'm from Sri Lanka and my name is Rashi. And it's evening here, so good evening, sir. And I don't have any idea about this group. Can you explain what is instead of going on here?
This is it. We're speaking about Jewish ethics. Thank you. We're speaking about Jewish ethics over here, and we just took a teachings of from.
What is Jewish? Can you explain? Because I have listened to so many clubs about this, but I don't have any idea about this. What is that Jewish? Can you explain it? I'm sorry. I'm really sorry about this.
Oh no! Don't be sorry. If we can bring awareness and enlightenment, that's what we're here for. So you know what? Do you know what a Jewish person is?
No, I don't know.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So you came to the right place. Are you familiar? Are you familiar with the Bible?
No, I am Hindu from just a different culture and.
Yeah. No. I understand that. I understand that, but you're not familiar with the Bible. Have you ever heard about Abraham?
About the Bible, it's the holy book of Christianity, and that's all I know.
Right.
Nothing more.
So Christianity it came from Judaism. Judaism is the Jewish people in Israel is a Jewish state. For example, it's the only Jewish state in the world, and that's definitely we're not as well known as others because we only have one Jewish state. Not that it really abides by all Jewish things, but whatever, it's Jewish people. That's the most important thing. And the Old Testament, the Bible, was something that began with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, who lived over 4,000 years ago, and came to the land of Israel and settled there. God said that this will be your eternal home ever since. And then at Mount Sinai, then the Jewish people eventually went into Egypt, into slavery. They were in slavery, and then Moses took us out of slavery and redeemed us. We came to Mount Sinai, and God then spoke to the entire Jewish people. The only time that God spoke to an entire nation rather than just one person who claims that God spoke to them, and gave us what we call the 10 Commandments. If you've heard the 10 Commandments, I'm the Lord your God who took you out of Egypt. There should be no other gods, not to murder, not to steal, and other of the commandments. And so this is our people, the Jewish people, that henceforth from the Mount Sinai came and were given the Torah, the Bible, the Old Testament, the only Testament from a Jewish perspective, to be our guide in our lives. And we serve one God to change the world for good, and that all of humanity has a place in the serving of God. You know, the Jewish people have a unique role of being a light unto the nations, but all other nations are also created in God's image. Very important. Every human being has that preciousness of being created in the divine image, and therefore they have a divine role in changing this world and making this world a better place to live in. So this is, in very brief, the concept of Judaism, based on the Jewish people, based on Moses bringing us out of Egypt as a people, receiving our marching orders, the 10 Commandments, and the rest of the Bible, the Old Testament, that is, to be ultimately in the land of Israel, and to be a light unto the nations from there, and to again change the world for good and bring ultimately the redemption to the world. So that's in a very brief who Jews are and what Judaism is. I invite you to come back and join us for other teachings when you see this or anything else from Chabad on Clubhouse. And any other questions or?
No, sir, thank you.
You're very welcome. I hope that brought some clarification.
Yeah, I'm cleared on screen, and thank you, sir.
All right, God bless you, and God bless everybody else. Thank you all. That was a
thanks.
that was very nice. Thank you for asking the question, because sometimes the most simple things that I take for granted, and maybe others who are Jewish take for granted, when someone isn't aware of what it means, a Jew in Judaism, it makes us think, and to be able to kind of crystallize it in the best, easiest form. All right, so folks, thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.